I'm 35 years old and my name is Ethan Brown. Everybody has a talent or strength of some type. I wasn't very good at art, music, or sports as a child. I also wasn't the gregarious, entertaining kind who made lots of friends. However, I had a natural aptitude for studies. As a result, I gradually began devoting more time to my studies, which I discovered to be my strongest area. I was the quintessential bookworm in middle and high school, a drab student who excelled academically. I attended a prominent institution in New York after graduating from one of the state's best high schools as a result of my hard work. I imagined that college would be a lively place where I could meet new people and have great experiences. However, that did not occur. The students around me enjoyed themselves, but they completed assignments, presentations, and college credits accurately. However, I worked hard to obtain credits and attended all of my classes. To put it another way, I was unable to become proficient at taking shortcuts or manipulating the system. I consequently continued to be an ordinary student during my time in college. I kept thinking about how boring I was as a person. Nevertheless, my perseverance paid off, and I received my degree in 4 years. I soon got a position with a top pharmaceutical business as a sales representative. My career in the pharmaceutical sector appeared to be going well. It is commonly known that working as a medical representative, monsieur, pays well and is in high demand. I made hospital rounds in my assigned area after visiting pharmaceutical wholesalers early each day. Some days lasted until the wee hours of the morning, and I got home after midnight. No matter how hard you worked, monthly sales quotas were established at impossible levels. Ethan, you're just 70% of your goal for the cure at the end of the month. Are you going to meet the quota? Your performance review will suffer if you don't. During team meetings on Mondays, my manager called out my poor performance and singled me out. People in the Mr. Industry will do everything it takes to reach their quotas. In the past, this resulted in common practices of overindulging doctors, which were finally outlawed following public outcry. I entered the field with the intention of using ethical sales techniques, but I soon discovered the unpleasant reality. Over the course of 6 years, there were flaws and dubious practices everywhere. Naturally, ever since I started working for the company, I had been doing my hardest to reach the quotas. Nevertheless, the quotas that I barely met the previous year were blatantly raised and given to me as though they were standard. The overly honest approach I took might have made me an easy target for MRs from competitor companies handling rival products. Gradually, they took over the market share, and the usage rate of my company's drugs in my assigned territory began to decline. To my manager, my performance and style were frustratingly inadequate. His criticism during meetings grew harsher, shifting from constructive advice to personal attacks and outright insults. After 6 years, my mind and body were completely worn out. The overwhelming quotas and managerial pressure eventually led to me collapsing during a client visit at the clinic. It was due to exhaustion. He must be pulling a performance stunt to gain sympathy from the doctors. Finally, he's learning to use some tactics. To outsiders, it may sound unbelievable, but these conversations among rival MRs reflect the industry's win-at-all-costs mentality. After that incident, I never fully recovered. Unable to return to work, I left the company. I decided to return to my parents' home to recover. My parents live in a remote area deep in the countryside. Their house could be described as isolated. As a child, I hated the countryside and couldn't wait to leave. That drive pushed me to excel in school and aim for life in the city. I never imagined I'd return, my dreams unfulfilled. All the effort I put into my studies back then, what was it all for? When I arrived home, my parents welcomed me warmly. When I told them I wanted to go to college in New York, and later when I decided to stay there for work, they had said nothing. They must have known how much I hated the countryside and how desperate I was to leave. Deep down, they probably had mixed feelings about their son returning after failing in the city. At home, my family grew vegetables and worked in forestry, so I started helping out with those. At that point, I thought of it as a recovery period until I could return to working in the city. In other words, I initially prioritized my career and planned to get back on track as quickly as possible. Should I return to the pharmaceutical industry? If so, should I go back to my former company or try another one? Maybe I could leverage my Mr. Experience for a sales role in a different industry. For the first 6 months, those were the kinds of thoughts running through my mind. But gradually, I began to find purpose and satisfaction in working with nature. The work I had once resented started to heal my weary mind and body, worn down by years of chasing sales quotas. Perhaps this was the kind of work I had been seeking all along. When I harvested the vegetables I had planted, fertilized, and weeded myself, or when I climbed a tree before cutting it down and gazed out over the expansive natural landscape in our family fields, I felt a sense of fulfillment I had never experienced in my corporate job in the city. I spent my days waiting for doctors until late at night, doing whatever it took to push my company's products. Every day demanded that I use any means necessary to achieve my quotas. Compared to that, how majestic nature is and how meaningful the vegetables harvested from it are. Nature doesn't respond to shortcuts or tricks. It demands patience, sincerity, and consistent effort. That country life might have been the kind of work that truly suited me best all along. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed since I left the company and returned to my parents' home. One day, on my way back from delivering vegetables to town, I saw an unfamiliar car and a woman standing beside it. It was rare to see someone visit such a remote area, and her perfectly tailored suit gave her the air of a stylish career woman. Seeing someone like her on an unpaved country road created an odd and almost comical contrast. Not that it was her fault. I decided to approach her. "Is everything okay?" She explained that she was heading to a famous restaurant nearby, which had been featured on TV several times, but her car had gotten a flat tire along the way. She had called a repair service, but the poor accessibility of the area meant they couldn't get there until the next day, leaving her stranded. When Kevin, who used to help with our forestry work, had car trouble, it took the repair guys 3 days to show up. "You're actually lucky," I told her. Her eyes widened in surprise. It was understandable. She was clearly from the city, and I had felt the same way about the countryside when I left. Even if her attitude showed a bit of disdain for the rural life, I couldn't blame her. It didn't seem like she meant any harm. "Anyway, if the repair service is coming tomorrow, I could just spend the night in my car," she said to me. "This area has bears and wild boar." As soon as I said this, her expression turned dark. It seemed she wasn't good at hiding her emotions. "In that case, I'll find a nearby hotel." "There aren't any hotels around here." "Then maybe I could take a bus or taxi back to town." The last bus already left, and a taxi ride to town would be very expensive, assuming you could even get one to come out here. With each response, her options dwindled, and her expression grew more troubled. She really is quite expressive. As the night wore on and the lights from the town began to fade, I made her an offer. "If you'd like, you can stay at my house." On the drive to my parents' home, I asked for her name and occupation. She introduced herself as Sarah and said she worked for a consulting company in New York specializing in hotel management. Her purpose here was to ask the manager of the restaurant to supervise a menu for one of their hotels. When we arrived and I saw her in proper lighting, I realized she was quite beautiful. However, she looked pale and gave off the impression of being more gaunt than simply slim. She reminds me of myself 7 years ago. I couldn't help but think that Sarah might be struggling with the demands of her work. My parents warmly welcomed her into our home and treated her as a guest. The warmth of the people around here might be something unique to rural life. For the locals who have lived here their whole lives, it's probably so natural that they don't even think about it. But to me, having returned from New York, it feels truly special. "Oh my, you're a real beauty. But you're so thin. Are you eating properly?" Such directness was also a hallmark of rural life. Concerned about her skinniness, my parents served her a feast made with fresh vegetables from our farm. At first, Sarah seemed taken aback by how quickly my parents closed the distance between them, but she was so impressed by the food that she polished off every bite. After she had calmed down, I showed her to the guest room and encouraged her to rest. Whether it was because the tension of dealing with the unexpected trouble had lifted, or because she'd had a rare chance to escape her usual demanding schedule, Sarah fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, she looked noticeably healthier. However, the repair service didn't arrive at the scheduled time. As I had feared, there had been some kind of mix-up, and they couldn't come right away. To make matters worse, the restaurant she was supposed to visit was closed, and she wouldn't be able to meet the chef until 3 days later. As a result, Sarah ended up staying at our house for nearly a week. Initially, she was hesitant about imposing, but my parents insisted, saying things like, "One extra person doesn't add much to the chores, food tastes better when shared, and we were planning to tidy up the house anyway, so your help would be welcome." Though a bit bewildered at first, she didn't seem entirely unhappy about staying. During her time with us, Sarah used the guest room and helped with tasks like tidying the house and working in the fields. My parents grew very fond of her, and the three of them became quite close. I came to appreciate how much my parents' warmth, something I had once dismissed as typical of country people, was actually a valuable quality. Their personalities, which had undoubtedly shaped my overly serious nature, were something I used to resent. But over the past 7 years, I had learned so much from them. Thanks to my parents, Sarah seemed healthier and more relaxed by the end of her stay. After about a week, her car was repaired and her business with the restaurant was complete. The day before she was set to return to New York, Sarah thanked me. "Thank you so much for everything. You've been a huge help." Though she said this, it seemed like there was more she wanted to say. So I asked her, "Is there something else on your mind?" She looked surprised, apparently unaware of how much her thoughts showed on her face. She explained that the relentless pressure and workload in New York had nearly pushed her to her limit. She admitted that the unexpected trouble and the weeks she spent here had been a saving grace for her. She was just like me 7 years ago. Hearing her story, I deeply understood how she felt, having experienced something similar myself in New York. "You've done well to keep going, but don't push yourself too hard." When I shared my personal experiences and offered those words to her, she broke down in tears, crying uncontrollably. Through her sobs, she repeatedly whispered her gratitude, then returned to New York. For a while after Sarah left, I couldn't fully focus on my farm work. Every time I passed the spot where her car had gotten a flat tire, I felt as if there was a huge hole in my heart. It was then that I finally realized I had fallen for Sarah, but it was already too late. Unfortunately, I figured I would never see her again. Around that time, I received a letter from a high school friend about a class reunion being held in New York. It had been 17 years since I graduated from high school. I always avoided such gatherings, coming up with various excuses to skip them. However, with a classmate who lived nearby telling me to show up for once, and my parents pestering me to go find herself a future wife, I reluctantly decided to attend. On the day of the reunion, the event was filled with classmates who had graduated from our prestigious high school and gone on to become high-ranking officials or executives at major companies. I couldn't bring myself to join their conversations. By now, most had been working for about a decade and had climbed the career ladder. As they talked about their careers and homes, I mentioned my life growing vegetables and working in forestry in the mountains. This prompted chuckles and turned me into the butt of their jokes. "Ethan joined a pharmaceutical company. Oh, wait, no, you quit, didn't you? And now he's a farmer? Talk about a glamorous career change." Must be nice to live a life without any real pressure. One particularly drunk classmate went as far as to mock me outright. "I bet you're still single, aren't you? A dropout like you wouldn't even have a girlfriend, let alone a wife." While his words were rude, I couldn't entirely deny their accuracy. Feeling humiliated, I decided to leave the venue. But then, out of nowhere, "Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go." "Oh, you must be Ethan's classmates. I am Ethan's girlfriend." A woman suddenly linked her arm with mine and turned to the others. The group froze in shock, clearly dumbfounded. But no one was more stunned than me. I glanced at her face, and it was Sarah. What? Ethan's girlfriend? That guy living the country life is dating someone that beautiful? How did that happen? Ignoring the shocked reactions of my classmates, Sarah took my hand and led me outside. Sorry for this sudden interruption, she said apologetically, though her expression seemed happy. Why are you here? I knew it was a silly question, but I couldn't help myself. After all, I had resigned myself to never seeing her again, and here she was. As it turns out, Sarah was actually a consultant for this hotel where the reunion was held, and she visited here today on her inspection. Sorry you heard such awful things, I apologized. But Sarah shook her head and replied, I'll never forget what you said to me that day. You've done well. After I went back to New York, the story you shared about your experience and how your life changed in the countryside stayed with me. The strange pressure I used to feel began to fade. That 1 week completely changed my life. She continued and then admitted that she had been thinking about me ever since. I confessed that I also could not stop thinking about her since she left. And so our long-distance relationship began. On her days off, Sarah would always come to stay at my house. When we get married, I'd love to settle down here and live a quiet, peaceful life. It was clear from her expression that she truly meant it. I can't wait for you and Sarah to start living together. Having fully sided with Sarah, they joined forces to pressure me in a way far more intense than any manager ever had. Yet it was pressure I was grateful for. The country life I had once despised during my student days had now completely transformed my life. Perhaps I was never suited for a career involving constant competition with others, resorting to underhanded tactics to boost sales and achieve success. All I had ever been capable of was facing the task in front of me with sincerity and persistence. I intend to face Sarah's feelings with the same sincerity, and soon I plan to tell her something that will bring this to fruition. Probably the most straightforward words I've ever spoken. Will she accept them?
Just go lick some salt. The sound eventually disappears. There is a big pile of salt in front of me. How did this happen? What is this about specifically? Alex looks at the salt and clicks his tongue lightly as I ask. Stop talking. I never authorized you to talk. I can't speak, so I freeze. The room is filled with laughter as the other staff members around us burst out laughing. I recognize this as harassment right away. The director of this department, Alex, was someone I had heard of. He reportedly graduated from one of the most prominent institutions at the top of his class. He currently leads the main office's department at the age of 59 and is scheduled to retire the following year. He looks much younger than he is, and he has such a commanding presence that I was speechless. I was only able to gaze at the salt mountain before me. Mark is my name. This year, I turned 50. I have to make a significant decision now. The headquarters. I muttered to myself as I sat in a rural hospital's courtyard. I was complimented by the person on the phone who described it as a significant promotion. I was reared in a rural area, attended a technical school for 5 years, and then attended an advanced program for 2 more years before. At the age of 22, I started working in a branch office of a large corporation. I gradually increased my accomplishments, moving up the ladder to a certain point. However, I was now asked if I would be interested in working at the main office. It didn't really interest me. Our lone daughter recently graduated from high school and began her first year as a working adult. My wife is a caring wife. I just want to live a quiet life with my wife. That's all I desire. I will be unable to commute from here if I relocate to the main office. Either my wife and I would have to move in together, or we would have to live apart. However, my wife is currently dealing with a medical condition that makes it difficult for her to go out. Naturally, there are many hospitals and physicians in Tokyo, the location of the main office. it would be easy for me to find someone who could take care of her. Moving and switching hospitals would still be a big hassle for her. Upon my return to the hospital room following the conversation, I noticed my wife gazing at the wind-blown curtain while likely enjoying some music on her earphones. "Chase your dreams," she added, smiling with her typical dazzling expression, as if my face was a mess from all my challenging thoughts. Even though I hadn't said yet, she was obviously aware of it after our more than 2 decades of dating. My eyebrows furrowed into a helpless look as I gave an ungainly smile. In my 3rd year of technical school, I made the decision to pursue this field. At the time, I struggled to decide whether to go to college or start working. There were no prospects for my future that I could envision. I regretted my decision to attend a technical school rather than a traditional high school because of its high employment placement rates. However, I met someone who altered my viewpoint in the last hour. I was inspired to persevere for 2 more years and complete the advanced program by that experience. Yeah, I guess I was lucky to fit so well into the ed industry and make it this far. Whom do you think I gave up on success for, you? Well, that's not true. It's half right and half wrong. I might seem like a man without ambition now, but when I was younger, I burned with a desire to climb the ladder and earn a position at the main office. But when I married my wife and our daughter was born, I began to value long-term stability over career advancement. A life surrounded by convenient things in Tokyo would be nice, sure, but I wanted my daughter to grow up in a natural environment and enjoy a real childhood. For that reason alone, I stepped off the fast track. But I have no regrets. My daughter grew into a straight-laced young woman, and although my wife fell ill, I have been able to be by her side to care for her. What more could I ask for? That's why this opportunity has me so conflicted. Sure, at this point in my life, I can make my own decision. Working at the main office wouldn't be so bad, but still, I'll always put you before my job. This is what I truly felt. What meaning was there in rising up the ranks now? As I molded over, my wife gently wrapped her hands around mine. She told me not to worry about her and to do what I wanted to do. What I wanted most was simply to be with her. And yet, deep down, there was still a flicker of that ambition. A part of me still longed to aim higher, to reach for something more. All right, I'll tell the director, Mr. Smith, that I'll consider it positively. Just give me a little more time to think. As I said this, the doctor and nurse entered the room. My wife had to be moved for a scheduled test. "Please take care of my wife," I said. With those parting words, I picked up my bag and left the room. The days were growing shorter in winter. Even though it had been warm during the day, the atmosphere grew unstable, and by evening, the cold air had swept in, dropping the temperature sharply. My visible breath reminded me that winter had arrived. I shivered, and as I did, my phone buzzed in my pocket. My daughter's name appeared on the screen. "What's up?" "Oh, we're having hot pot tonight." "That's great." "What? No meat?" "Ah, all right. I'll pick some up. You get the vegetables ready." I hung up and ducked into a nearby store, seeking both warmth and the missing ingredients. The supermarket was cool, but not uncomfortably cold. I instinctively reached for lean meat but then tossed some marbled beef into the basket as well. And of course, hot pot calls for beer. I'd heard that canned beer these days could rival a freshly poured draft. I rarely drink, but since my daughter was preparing the meal, it seemed fitting to indulge. I found myself smiling naturally as I filled the basket, paid for my items, and headed home. I felt moments of happiness. For me, they were more than enough to feel fulfilled. Maybe I should never have accepted the transfer to the main office. That thought crossed my mind as I encountered an event that made me realize it. Just go lick some salt. The noise around me faded into the distance, In front of me sat a large mound of salt. How had it come to this? As I closed my eyes, memories from a few days ago resurfaced. The day after sharing hot pot and beers with my daughter, I called Mr. Smith to accept the transfer. Mr. Smith immediately began making arrangements and told me to attend a networking event the next day. It felt as though they had already planned on convincing me, even if I declined. Since I accepted, it didn't matter anymore. Fine, I'll attend the event, but my wife is unwell, so I'd like to delay my transfer a little and work remotely for now, if possible, I said. Mr. Smith agreed without hesitation and moved forward with preparations. Only a handful of employees had ever been transferred from this branch to the main office. Mr. Smith knew that I had once chosen to stay here rather than pursue promotions. That's likely why he was so determined for me to accept this opportunity. There was nothing particularly bad about the offer. If not for my wife's illness, I probably would have accepted without hesitation. And so things progressed quickly, and before I knew it, the day of the networking event had arrived. Just before the event, I came face to face with someone. Alex, the man who placed a mound of salt in front of me and told me to lick it. So, you're Mark, the guy transferring here from the branch, he said. I've told them I don't need subordinates. What's the deal with this? Listen up, I don't need you. Don't show up to the networking event. Got it? He warned. But pulling out at the last minute would have caused more problems than it solved. I didn't give it much thought and attended anyway. And this is where it got me. What exactly is this about? I stared at the salt mound in front of me and asked. Alex clicked his tongue softly. Shut up. I never said you could speak, he snapped. I froze, unable to utter another word. The employees around us burst into laughter, and the room erupted into a chorus of mockery. I knew immediately that this was harassment. I had heard about Alex before. Rumor had it he graduated at the top of his class from a prestigious university. Everyone knew he's now the head of the 8th division at the main office, and, at 59, is set to retire next year. The sheer authority he exuded was enough to make me shrink in silence, unable to do anything but stare at the ridiculous pile of salt. After a moment, Alex let out a heavy sigh. See? I warned you. You brought this on yourself. There's an open seat over there. Go sit there. Stay out of my sight. When I followed his pointed finger, I noticed a single empty seat across the room. For a moment, I thought I saw some of the employees, those who had just been laughing at me, glare sharply at Alex. Maybe it was my imagination. Deciding it would be pointless to escalate the situation, I quietly moved to the other seat. The rest of the networking event proceeded without further incident, and it ended without much more fuss. On my way out, I stopped at a convenience store near the venue to grab some stomach medicine. That's when I overheard a conversation coming from a dimly lit smoking area nearby. I hadn't intended to eavesdrop, but the voices carried. Man, I didn't think he'd actually say something like that. Acting all high and mighty just because. He got promoted from a branch office. Did you see his face when he saw that mound of salt? Priceless. It was one of the employees who had mocked me earlier, and the person he was speaking to was Alex. Don't get carried away, Alex said. From their tone, it became clear that Alex and this man were working together, or so it seemed at first. Maybe they were old friends or colleagues of the same rank. I was ready to leave, frustrated by their petty conversation, when suddenly the atmosphere turned tense. Don't get carried away. You were enjoying it too, Alex added. The mood turned tense. If Alex had been the ringleader of the salt incident, they wouldn't be having this argument now. If anything, they'd be laughing about it together. Instead, it seemed like the employee was the only one enjoying the situation. Alex, unfazed, spoke in his usual disinterested tone. If you have time to pull childish stunts like that, you should have spent it on something useful. I only covered for you. Normally, I wouldn't have bothered, but I had to intervene because I knew about it in advance. What was he talking about? Covered for him. Knew about it? Left unchecked, I started listening to them in the middle of the conversation and had no idea what they were talking about. Whatever had happened, it wasn't as simple as him scheming to humiliate me. Fine, the employee snapped. I thought you were on the same page as me, but clearly I was wrong. You're always acting so smug, so of it all. It's infuriating. With that, the male employee stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray and turned sharply on his heel as he exited the smoking area. His eyes landed on me, and his expression darkened even further, twisting into something even more hostile. Eavesdropping, huh? What a classy hobby. Somebody like you doesn't deserve to be promoted to the main office. I won't accept it. With that, he bumped his shoulder into mine as he passed and stormed off. Having apparently heard the conversation, Alex also emerged from the smoking area. The faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered on him, but it didn't come through in his breath as if he hadn't been smoking himself. I told you, didn't I? There's no point in attending these networking events. The main office is far uglier than you realize, filled with more petty rivalries than you can imagine. I heard you'll be working under me, but staying at the branch office and working remotely. Retire there. I don't want to see you here. With those parting words, Alex walked off in the opposite direction, disappearing into the night. The next day, Alex didn't bother to hide his irritation as I stood before him, unbothered by the dark aura surrounding him. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Well, actually, I couldn't get a flight home, so I'll be working here today. The executive director also asked me to accompany you to your business meeting," I replied. "I look forward to working with you, Alex." As Alex stepped left to get past me, I mirrored his movement. He stepped right, I stepped right. It was like a comedy skit. After a few more rounds of this, Alex finally let out an exasperated sigh. "Even if I told you not to come, you wouldn't disobey a directive from the executive director. I hear you held a manager role at the age of 50 back at the branch. If that's the case, you should already understand how to handle yourself. You may have turned your back on further promotions and settled at that level, but you still know how to act. Don't do anything unnecessary." "Understood. That's the condition for letting you tag along." "I understand." Realizing I wouldn't back down, no matter what he said, Alex let out yet another heavy sigh, one of many that day. We got into the company car. When I slid into the driver's seat without hesitation, he blinked in surprise. "What's so shocking about this? Something wrong?" Alex shook his head slightly. "No, it's just I usually travel alone, so I'm never in the passenger seat. It feels odd, that's all." Once I confirmed he had buckled his seatbelt, I slowly started the car. As expected of Tokyo, the roads were complex, and the sheer number of lanes had me flustered. "This is why I suggested I drive well," Alex commented. "Whatever. Consider it part of your education. Up ahead, once you cross that bridge, this lane will only turn left. You're going straight, so merge into the right lane when you see the chance." His directions and guidance were spot on, and thanks to him, we managed to arrive safely at the client company's parking lot. At first, I thought Alex was inscrutable, but I realized he was surprisingly attentive. He wasn't careless or apathetic. He was a serious and meticulous person, and that only made the incident with the mound of salt feel stranger to me. Yes, Alex had told me to lick the salt, but I couldn't help but feel I was missing something. Something didn't add up. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing a piece of the puzzle. After checking in at reception, we were led to a conference room where we waited. Soon, a representative from the client company appeared. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened in surprise. We stared at each other in silence for several seconds before he broke into a big smile and exclaimed, "It's been a long time, Mark. I heard someone was accompanying Alex today, but I didn't expect it to be you." Ah, now it all makes sense. The young man, probably in his early 30s, bowed his head hesitantly. Without missing a beat, I responded, "Let's just cancel a $54 billion deal." Huh? Alex sputtered, turning pale. The young man blinked, startled at my blunt declaration before suddenly chuckling. "That look on your face is always the same when you're joking." "Ah, you caught me," I replied, feeling a small sense of satisfaction. Considering what Alex had put me through, I couldn't resist a little payback. As Alex looked, completely out of the loop, the client representative began explaining. "You see, Mark here has helped me out quite a bit in the past. I've heard all about him. If Mark is involved, then we're happy to sign the deal." "What?" Alex muttered, clearly stunned by the rapid turn of events. He turned to me, clearly, demanding an explanation. "Well, we're both alumni from the same technical school. I visited the school as an alumnus a few times, and we were in the same department, so we're somewhat acquainted." Alex seemed to ponder this for a moment before nodding. "I see. Since we've already explained the details in previous meetings, shall we skip the formalities?" "Of course. In fact, we were going to let you know today that we're prepared to move forward with the contract." From there, the negotiation progressed smoothly. Still, even as everything wrapped up, Alex's expression remained unusually stern. Once we returned to the company car and settled in, Alex spoke the moment the door shut. "This doesn't make any sense." That company had been torn between signing with us and our rival. And yet, the moment they saw you, their attitude completely flipped. "It's clearly thanks to the connections and accomplishments you've built up since your school days. But listen closely. This success is mine, not yours." That's only natural. After all, I had simply accompanied him today. It's only natural that all the credit goes to Alex, I thought. After all, he was the one who had led all those discussions. I wasn't particularly bothered by it, but I couldn't figure out why he had made such a pointed comment. That uncertainty gnawed at me as I returned to the office. 2 months passed quickly. I kept asking myself the same questions over and over. After coming home, was it really okay for me to accept the transfer to the main office? If I did, it would mean leaving my wife behind. With those unsettled thoughts swirling in my mind, I visited the hospital where my wife was staying. As always, she seemed to understand exactly what I was thinking. "If you think you can do it, don't miss this chance," she said. Our daughter was there too. She told me that until I got settled, she would take care of everything related to her mother's hospital stay. She had just turned 19 and was in her first year. As a working adult, I didn't want to burden her, but seeing how responsible she had become and knowing my wife's wishes, I realized it was time to trust them. Finally, I made my decision. I've decided to take the position at the main office. It's going to cause some inconvenience for a while, but once things calm down, we'll reevaluate the situation. Until then, I'll be living alone for a bit. Please bear with me. I felt so guilty, but the encouragement from my wife and daughter gave me the resolve I needed to move forward. At 50, it's still too early to give up. 3 months after that company networking event, I officially received notice of my transfer to the main office. As expected, Alex was now my boss. "I hadn't heard anything from you, so I thought you decided to stay at the branch office, but here you are, back for more. Well, whatever. I'm too busy to babysit you. Find your own work and handle it as you see fit." Alex's words were sharp and cold, But his actions told a different story. He fulfilled his responsibilities as a manager with care. The tasks he assigned were always within my capacity, and he chose work that aligned with my experience. For someone so capable, it was strange that I was his only subordinate at the moment. One evening, as I was heading home, I realized I'd forgotten something at the office. It was already October, yet the lingering summer heat was oppressive, and the asphalt still radiated warmth. As I walked back to the company, wiping the sweat from my forehead, I returned to the office and found someone still working alone in the department. It was Alex. "Good evening," I called out to him. His shoulders jolted slightly, startled, but the moment he realized it was me, he let out an exaggerated sigh. "Oh, it's just you, Mark." That was all he said before turning back to his computer. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary scene, but it was already past office hours, and Alex didn't get paid for overtime. In a small and medium-sized company, it might be a different story, but ours was a major corporation. As the head of the department, his position came with a hefty salary, allowance, which meant no extra pay for staying late. So there was nothing for him to gain by working alone like this. What could he be so focused on? Just as I was wondering, Alex stretched and mumbled under his breath, almost as if talking to himself. "You're the only one foolish enough to stick around. You know that, right? I'm not exactly popular. Being around me won't do you any favors, so you'd be better off keeping your distance." Before I could respond, he stood up without waiting for an answer. After shutting down his computer, he gestured for me to follow, as if to say, "Come on." Without a word, I trailed behind Alex, watching his back as he walked. The brightly lit hallway stretched ahead in stark contrast to the dim city streets visible through the windows. We stopped at the new vending machine the company had just installed, and he asked me what I wanted to drink. "I'll take a black coffee," I replied. "You're not one to hold back, are you?" he said, "but you're probably the only one who talks to me like this anymore. I don't hate it, though." "Here you go," he said as the canned coffee clattered down. Alex handed it to me. For someone who always wore such a stern expression, there was a surprising softness to his face that night. "Thank you." The cold coffee soothed me, spreading a refreshing coolness through my body. I'd never liked black coffee much when I was younger, but it had grown on me with age. While I was thinking about that, Alex bought himself a bottle of water and drank it, his gaze fixed on the vending machine. Then, as if continuing our earlier conversation, he quietly murmured, almost to himself, "You won't believe this, but everyone who works under me ends up failing. I'm not superstitious, but sometimes I wonder if I'm cursed. Maybe I should go get a purification ritual or something." Caught off guard by his unexpected comment, I froze, unsure of how to respond. Unbothered by my reaction, Alex continued speaking. "It wasn't always like this, you know. Back then, I had good subordinates. So good you wouldn't believe it, looking at me now. But eventually, all of them drifted away, triggered by something or another. Most of them now work at regional branches or small offices because of me. They were pushed off the fast track. That's why I'm certain you'll break at some point too." A self-deprecating smile crossed his face. What exactly had he gone through to reach his current position? Competition for promotions exists in the branch offices as well, but it's nothing compared to what happens at the main office. I recalled something Alex had said to me not long ago. The main office is a place overflowing with darker, more toxic emotions than you can imagine. He must have fought and clawed his way through that murky, cutthroat environment, believing in his path and pushing forward until he finally reached the position of division head. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel that he had lost a great deal along the way. Isn't that just how promotions work, though? When someone moves up, someone else inevitably gets left behind. You earned this position because you deserved it, Isn't that right? But Alex shook his head, denying my words. Did I do things that earned me resentment? Yeah, probably. To get this far, I had to outmaneuver my peers and win. That's the truth. But you're different from me. You have people to protect, and I don't think you'd ever pull the reckless stunts I did. It's true that I have a responsibility to protect my wife and daughter. Even though my daughter has become independent, she is still my child, and that will never change. That was exactly why Alex feared having me work under him. About that incident at the networking event, I never properly apologized. You won't believe me now, but I only found out about the salt prank just before it happened. Someone told me that Guy was planning something stupid to mess with you, but the problem was he's technically my subordinate. So I had to think carefully about how to handle it as his boss. Of course, he could have just reprimanded the guy on the spot. That would have been the easiest solution. But instead, Alex had tried to manage the situation quietly, covering for his subordinate while minimizing the impact on me. The whole lick the salt comment had just slipped out, apparently without much thought. But still, it's a fact that I hurt you. I figured if I made things hard for you, you'd hate me enough to go back to the branch office. I was trying to keep my distance from you, but here you are, stubbornly sticking around. Surprisingly, he smiled. Not his usual sharp, cynical grin, but something softer. That's ridiculous, I said, half joking. Alex let out a quiet laugh. I think so too. After a brief silence, he sighed and finally explained why he'd been working late. The recent negotiation went well. I kept the credit under my name because I didn't want you to become a target for harassment again, but you seem capable enough now. Pausing for a moment, Alex handed me a small slip of paper. On it were the names of several employees, presumably for the project. The client specifically requested you as the project leader. You know them, don't you? He asked. I'm getting older. It's time for me to step back and let the next generation take over. I'll make sure management knows you were the key to the success of that deal. These are the project team members. Lead them well and show them what you can do with that. Alex took another sip of water and, saying he still had work to do, headed back to the office. The next day, the project team was officially announced. At first, some team members grumbled about me being appointed leader, but as they watched me work, the complaints eventually died down. Having been entrusted with this role by Alex, I felt a sense of duty to give it my all. The project began smoothly, but then a major problem struck: unauthorized system access, leading to a data leak. According to the report from upper management, someone had attempted to infiltrate our system externally. They had accessed logs containing confidential project information, throwing the entire company into chaos. Naturally, the project was immediately frozen, and an emergency meeting was called. As the project leader, I attended, and that's when I learned the shocking truth. The unauthorized access had come from Alex's computer and account. The exact cause remained unclear, but it seemed that Alex's account had been used as a stepping stone to access the core of the system and extract sensitive information. Naturally, the client was furious about the situation. The person I'd reconnected with during the negotiation called me, sounding apologetic and overwhelmed as he tried to get a handle on the details. Nothing concrete had been decided yet, but the project was on the verge of being canceled. If that happened, it would result in far more than just significant losses. It would be catastrophic. If Alex wasn't at fault, that would have been one thing. But the logs showed that his account password had been overly simplistic, making it easy to crack. The records also revealed that his computer had been left running unattended during certain times. Impossible. That was the first thought that struck me. Alex always shut down his computer whenever he left his desk. Alex had always been strict about account management. He had warned me more than once. I've had subordinates in the past who fell victim to unauthorized access. One guy even used his wife's name and birthday as his password. Don't ever do something like that. Got it. And more importantly, Alex was the head of the 8 division and an 8 specialist through and through. The upper management seemed just as baffled by the situation. They couldn't believe Alex would make such an amateur mistake. But with the logs pointing to his account, there was no way for Alex to escape disciplinary action. Even in this crisis, Alex remained calm. See what I mean? Anyone under me never ends up. Well, up until now, it's always been my subordinates who got into trouble. I guess it's finally my turn. Honestly, the fact that I've come this far without a slip-up was unnatural. I've got nothing to lose. If they hit me with damages, I'll pay it off with my retirement funds and quit. I was close to retirement anyway. Alex muttered those words quietly, almost to himself. Watching him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this situation had been orchestrated. Something didn't add up. Time was running out. If I didn't act quickly, both the project and Alex's fate would be decided before I had a chance to stop it. In that moment of urgency, I unexpectedly crossed paths with someone. Oh, you're still hanging around Alex? Huh. Even after what happened at the networking event, you're quite the loyal one, but it's over for him now. What a shame, the man sneered as he brushed past me, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Could it be? If my suspicions were correct, time was of the essence, and any delay would only make things worse. Realizing I couldn't waste another second, I spun on my heel and headed straight for my desk. Ignoring the company-issued laptop, I pulled out my personal computer, the one I always carried with me, and powered it up. This incident, no, everything that had been happening around Alex, was connected. I was certain of it. Focused and determined, I stared at my screen and started digging. What are you doing? The voice startled me. I looked up to find Alex standing over me. It seemed lunchtime was over, and employees were filing back into the office. Despite being at the center of this mess, Alex looked oddly composed. Or maybe he'd just given up entirely. Alex had carried so much on his shoulders, fighting his way through countless battles. In the process, he had lost so much. Yet he never looked back, and he just kept moving forward. There was no way I could let him fall so easily here. I clenched my fists tightly and took a deep breath. Without answering Alex's question, I continued typing furiously, my focus unwavering. Perhaps it was my intensity, but before long, a crowd began to gather around me, watching silently. All right, everyone, back to your work, I called out, but at that exact moment, I shot up from my seat. I've found it. What is it? Someone asked. I had finally uncovered the truth. The logs being used as evidence had been falsified through highly sophisticated techniques. Look at this. Ordinarily, when a log is modified, the system keeps a record of the date and details of the change. However, in this case, traces of that record, being erased, still remain. Everything else was wiped clean, which means this was likely a careless mistake by the culprit. And from there, the trail became clear. The unauthorized access didn't come from outside. It came from within the company. While it's true that the division head's account was accessed, the IP address of the device used shows that it originated from inside the office. In other words, the culprit is one of us. If we trace this IP address, we'll find out who's responsible. At my words, the room filled with gasps of disbelief from employees who clearly didn't understand what was happening. Even Alex looked stunned, his expression uncharacteristically frozen as he stared at the suspicious IP address and the falsified logs displayed on the screen. I couldn't figure it out on my own, so I looked into it too, but I couldn't find anything. I thought, whoever did this was simply more skilled than me, and when the evidence is so clear, there's no fighting it. But I never imagined it. It was now clear that Alex had been framed, deliberately set up by someone, and I knew exactly who would be unhappy with this revelation. This is nonsense. Mark's making this up. The voice came from a man I recognized. Immediately, the same one who had sneered at me earlier, the same one who had been antagonistic toward me from the start. He was visibly shaken, his fists trembling slightly as he tried to compose himself. Almost instinctively, he began to hurriedly shut down his laptop as if trying to hide something. Alex didn't miss a beat. Wait, what did you just hide? Bringing personal computers into this room requires explicit approval. Mark submitted a request beforehand, so that's fine. This is the 8th Division after all. We manage the backbone of the company's security. Now, hand over whatever you just hid. The office instantly erupted in murmurs. We are assigned to the security division within the 8th Headquarters Department, although we also handle sales, which sometimes causes people to mistake us for salespeople. Our primary responsibilities are system development and security management. Because of this, bringing unauthorized devices into the department is strictly prohibited. Even company-issued laptops cannot be brought into this room without prior approval. You realize that your actions are as good as an admission of guilt. Now hand it over, Alex ordered sharply. The man hesitated, his expression contorted with frustration. But eventually, he surrendered the laptop. The IP address confirmed it. The device matched the one that had accessed Alex's account. Given the circumstances, there was no doubt now. He was the culprit. You had to falsify logs with some pretty impressive skills. Why misuse such talent for this? I asked. Because of Alex, my career was ruined. The man's angry shout cut over my words. It was clear he held a deep grudge against Alex. The employees who had mocked me before seemed to share his sentiments, having followed this man's lead, blaming Alex for his own lack of success. He lashed out with completely self-centered anger. I knew I wouldn't get his position even after he retired, so I decided to strike first, pull him down and make him leave in disgrace. It was nothing but petty, twisted jealousy. The entire room fell into stunned silence, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Yet the man carried on, a crazed smile spreading across his face. Everyone knows what a lousy boss Alex is. He's a disgrace as a manager. He doesn't deserve to be here. His words were sharp, but I knew the truth. Alex had told me himself about his subordinates being transferred one after another, and about how he had been resented during the cutthroat race for promotions. It's inevitable for someone in a leadership role to become a target for such negative emotions. But I know the truth. Alex may believe he brought the resentment upon himself, but he's also the one who stayed late, without overtime pay to organize work for newcomers, and who took the most earnest approach to training the next generation. And now I realize something else. It was this man who had been pulling the strings, turning those who respected Alex against him and pushing for their transfers out of spite. You're just aware of your own incompetence, aren't you? What, even if Alex retires, there's no way you'd ever get his position. Deep down, you know that. And that realization that you're not good enough only fueled your resentment. That's why you resorted to this, didn't you? He didn't say a word. His face flushed red with anger, his teeth grinding audibly as he looked down in frustration, unable to deny the truth. This was it, the moment to reveal my hand. Your skills were impressive, but they weren't good enough to beat me. Do you want to know why? There is a reason why I was content with my position as a section manager at the branch office. I stepped forward, pulling a business card from my pocket and handing it to him. His face, contorted in shock as he read it, then went pale. His knees buckled, and he sank to the floor. The Internal Audit Division Director. What? The entire room erupted into shocked murmurs. Clearly, no one had expected me to hold such a critical position within the company. I always felt the importance and allure of being in a leadership position, yet being part of internal audit meant working behind the scenes often, in roles that invited resentment. No one wanted the job, and it was precisely when I had stepped away from the promotion race that the company president personally offered it to me. Right now, I've entrusted the core responsibilities to a trusted subordinate who has taken over much of my original role. In truth, I'm just a figurehead as the head of internal audit, and my real position is as Alex's subordinate. But this time, I'm glad I was able to use my experience to prove Alex's innocence. At that moment, the culprit slumped to the floor, defeated. Before long, word reached the president and executives, and the offending employee was taken away. It was officially announced that there had been no data leak, only unauthorized accessed and falsified logs, orchestrated to frame Alex. A few months passed. The project resumed without issue and was now performing well, steadily, increasing sales. During that time, I delivered a message to Alex from several people. They were grateful to you, you know. Back when they were backed into a corner, you were the only one who relentlessly defended their innocence to upper management. They didn't want to be a burden to you, so they chose to step aside on their own. In the end, moving to regional offices gave them peace of mind. Some got married, others had children, and none of them regret their decision. As for the transfers of Alex's subordinates, it turned out that the same man had been behind it, jealous of Alex for having loyal and talented team members while he had none. He schemed to drive them away out of spite. Once the facts were revealed, the company issued an apology to the employees who had been wrongfully transferred. They were even offered positions back at the main office, but they all declined. When I visited them, they all had the same message: give our regards to Alex. Hearing this, Alex pulled out a handkerchief and quietly dabbed at his eyes. When he asked me why I had helped him, I told him a story from my past. When I was still a student, back in my 3rd year, an external lecturer gave a talk. He said, "Your skills aren't just for yourself, but they can influence those around you. The most important thing is to use your abilities wisely." His words stayed with me. It was a small thing, but it made me reevaluate my career path and my life. That lecturer had been an IT specialist and an excellent salesperson. At the time, I was thinking of leaving my information engineering program, but at the end of his talk, he said, the first step to success is finding what you're good at and developing it. I couldn't forget those words, so I stuck with security as my specialty and ended up where I am today. I smiled as I finished, and Alex looked at me, his eyes wide with surprise. "I never doubted you. The look in your eyes hasn't changed since back then. I knew there had to be more to this situation, and I was right. The person who inspired my path in life then and now hasn't changed a bit." At that, Alex rubbed his nose, clearly embarrassed. Shortly after, Alex retired, leaving the company amid genuine regret from his peers. Now he spends his time visiting his former subordinates and reconnecting with them, enjoying a peaceful and well-earned retirement. As for me, perhaps it's time I started a new chapter of my life as well. With the dust settled, my wife finally recovered from her illness, and my daughter cradling her newborn baby, New Joy, came into our lives. At last, I became a grandfather,